Welcome to the Peter Legge podcast, where you're empowered to lead, inspire, and influence. Now, here's your host and mentor, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed speaker, and community leader, Dr. Peter Legge.
Good morning, everyone. It's Peter Legge here on our weekly broadcast. And we have three great panelists today who are going to share their wisdom with us. Would you please welcome Lara Tamblyn Watts, who is the founder and CEO of CanAge, Anur Mehdic, who is the city planner of the City of New Westminster, and Leanore Sali, who is information and referral specialist for SSBC. Folks, welcome. It's good to have you here. And today we hope to address the prevalence of ageism in our society and explore ways to combat this type of discrimination. So first of all, Lara, tell me, how would you explain exactly what is ageism?
You know, the definition of ageism came in the 70s and really focuses on how people are judged by stereotypes. So we think about, other types of discrimination. So it is a stereotype based on how a person is perceived because of their age, which may include disabilities. It may include a sense of not being relevant, or in some cases, if you have ageism at the younger years, it may mean that you're unable to do something based on your age.
Okay. Do older adults experience ageism?
Overwhelmingly, the answer is yes. Statistics Canada created a report not that long ago that found that more than 50% of Canadians are profoundly ageist, not just a little bit ageist, but they're profoundly ageist. And that's in line with the World Health Organization's report that found that ageism is the single most prevalent form of discrimination in the world. We're not short of forms of discrimination. So that should just tell you how challenging an intersectional aspect to it is. So if you're a person who's aging, and you may be aging with racialized background, you may be aging with poverty, you may be aging with a disability, things become ever more complex because you're going to have many layers of discrimination that you have to face and overcome.
Is there a bridge of ageism? Like, what ages would you call old?
It's always an interesting question to see what we call older. And, in our broader society in Canada, we think about the age of death as being about 83 or 84. You may, however, be discriminated based on your age at a very young level. So many people will say the fact that they don't have young people's voices in voting is a form of age-based discrimination. And it is. It's a legislated one, but it is a form of discrimination based on age. So you can experience age-based discrimination at any age. Having said that, it's hard to imagine going to a store, going to the London Drugs, going to the Shoppers Drug Mart, whatever it is, and getting a birthday card and not seeing things get really rude and really upsetting, probably at about 40 for women. Men typically have a lower level of age-based discrimination because they have protected factors that are not experienced usually by women or people with other backgrounds, other disabilities, other races, other gender experiences. So, 40 is the end of the world for lots of women who are aging. If I think about what a senior is, the government tells us it's mostly 60 or 65. In Silicon Valley, men start experiencing ageism at about 37. So it all depends on what you're trying to achieve.
Did you say the Silicon Valley?
In the tech world, it's very masculine and it's very youth focused. And so the highest levels of Botox and plastic surgery for men is in Silicon Valley because it tends to be tech entrepreneurs where 25 or 30 is considered almost over the hill. But the overwhelming reality of ageism is that it affects people as they are retiring or getting older. Usually we think about 60, 65, and 70. Again, whatever protective factors that you have to your benefit may help with that. So again, I remember talking to a friend of mine. He was a straight white man. He was very privileged, very successful, ran a large financial enterprise. And he said he'd never felt any kind of discrimination until he was about 70 or 75 on the golf course, when people stopped knowing that he was important and fancy in his work, and he just became some old guy who was hitting around a ball. So it has a lot to do with your notion of social value as well.
Anna, this is a question for you. Now, you're a city planner of the City of New Westminster. My former home is where I was raised, and you've been working to engage old adults in decision-making processes. Can emergency preparedness work?
Yeah, thank you. So just to give it a little background, I'm a social planner, and it's in the community planning team. And one of our key pillars of our work is to meaningfully engage with the community, specifically residents with lived and living experience. Given my lived experience, I'm in a position where I have power, but I may not be an expert in everything. So a big role of mine is to help open doors and invite those with lived and living experience into the City Hall. To directly engage with decision makers. So a really good example of this in the past has been emergency preparedness. I think we all saw through COVID, the COVID pandemic, and the heat dome and the following wildfire seasons. This was direct evidence that older adults, particularly those who are frail, low income, and living in independent residence, are particularly vulnerable. Recognizing this, we also saw that emergency preparedness work closely correlates to social connectedness. So the city's emergency management office, community planning, and senior service society, we piloted something called Connect and Prepare, which is an innovative approach to build community emergency preparedness by strengthening social connections between neighbors. This year, the project partners have been piloting and testing this approach in several buildings throughout the city. And in this program, tenants, a majority of which are older adults, they're guided to develop skills to bring stronger social connections as a foundation for community resilience. It's really about taking collective action on acute emergencies, especially related to climate changes we're seeing. This is, to me, is an important step in community planning, which is trying to leave the community not with just more immediate products, older adults, such as emergency preparedness, but also increasing their capacity to meet their future needs by being active and empowered. So a big part of my job is equitable engagement, and that includes through work like emergency preparedness, which is one of the most acute emergencies following the pandemic and extreme heat.
Okay. Well, what kinds of intergenerational opportunities do you have today to truly be inclusive of all age groups?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can provide 3 examples. One is actually a plug for something that's going to be happening in the city that I actually find quite exciting. It's going to be a new community advisory assembly, which is going to be a new engagement pilot project. So this is going to be a large group where residents have the opportunity to provide direct advice to city council and city staff on a variety of topics. And they're current topics that are expected to directly affect their day-to-day lives. So, for example, older adults will sit at a table with youth and all the residents in between to discuss projects that may impact them. Such an example would be our Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Plan. Through the Community Advisory Committee, this will be a large group of residents, much larger than traditional committees, that's intergenerational, and it's going to meet on a regular basis, much more often than regular committees, which only met every few months. They'll be meeting on a monthly basis. It's going to be focused on dialogue and deliberation. And like I said, it's going to include membership that represents the overall demographic of our city, and connect on ways to support participants to address barriers to participation. I will mention at the end that applications are going to open in the end of September, and I'll be connecting with organizations serving older adults because this is a substantive and important intergenerational opportunity at the city to collaborate directly with decision makers and city staff. The other really fun example that I want to provide in US that's interesting is that our youth center is novel in that it's connected to our senior center. So the New West Youth Services Hub and the Century House Association are actually share the same space. When this opened, many asked the questions, could youth and seniors successfully share a space? And the answer there has been a resounding yes. in past interviews and engagement with youth and seniors, they've shared that the space isn't just working, it's actually bringing benefits to both seniors and youth. Seniors benefit because they get to engage with the youth, use the center space, access the computer lab, exercise room, multi-space. And youth actually benefit because they get to engage with older adults in the community and actually have created a lot of friendship. It showed that friendship really has no age. A program I really like at the youth center, something called Notably 90s, where those who have celebrated a birthday in their 90s actually connect with those who might actually just be in grade 9. And one of the feedback that is constantly received through this connection is that both youth and older adults will say, I learned so much from them, and somehow they still manage to learn something from me. So that goes both ways. We recently hired a new recreation manager, which oversees youth and senior services. So it's going to ensure that these opportunities and connections continue.
Very interesting. Leanore, here's a couple of questions. What kind of systemic discriminations do older adults experience?
Well, from our perspective or organization, we help a lot of older adults find housing. That's one of our main activities. And we see a lot of discrimination, especially in today's market when it comes to housing. I was talking to a gentleman just yesterday, and he's been trying to help his mother find housing. Where she's been living for a number of years, the building's being redeveloped. And he has contacted many people about this, and she can afford market housing. So they're not looking even for low-income housing, market housing. And everywhere he goes, everybody he contacts, as soon as they find out that it's for a senior, they just say, no, not interested. We're not going to house seniors. So it's really blatant discrimination when it comes to housing, and we're seeing that more and more every day. We also see it because we work with a lot of low-income seniors who want to either go back to work or even part-time, full-time, because they need help with affordability, with paying their expenses, etc. And many of them are very qualified. They've got lots of experience, skills, but they cannot get back into the job market. They're finding that extremely difficult. And again, clearly discriminated because of age. It also comes through with families. Often we work with older adults. They may be living with their son or their daughter. They moved in to help them either pay their rent or their mortgage. They've been babysitting the kids. As soon as the children get of an age where they no longer need babysitting, then they want them to move. They want them to leave. They're sort of excluded from a lot of the activities, etc., because they think they're now too old. And I think that they should be moving into places that are more for older adults, etc. So it's quite blatant when it comes to families as well. And then we do hear it a lot, and I hear it almost on a daily basis, this sort of self-directed ageism, where it's internalized. They've kind of bought into this stereotype and view their own aging in a very negative way. And they're accepting these stereotypes and biases and discrimination about aging. And it really has an impact, I think, on them. We find even in sort of managing their day-to-day life, they start to think that they're not competent anymore. They're not capable. And that even impacts when they're trying to find a job as well. So it sort of erodes their self-esteem and leads to self-doubt, and can be very harmful because, again, we find that because of this, they sort of socially isolate themselves and they limit their activities based on also thinking that I'm an older person now, what shouldn't I do? Or I shouldn't be doing this, or I can't do this any longer. And it really does have an impact on them. So we see it in that way as well.
Well, tell me, what exactly is self-ageism? Can you explain that?
I think that's sort of that negative image of aging that you have about yourself, right? That ageism is negative, is bad, right? And so you actually believe that and start to behave in that way, right? So it would be like even how you think about yourself or those moments, and probably Laura can jump in here, but I mean, if you say, I'm having a senior moment because you've forgotten something or you've forgotten somebody's name, and really it might be just, you just got too much on your mind, you know, that kind of thing, which is very ageist. And you start to think about yourself as, oh, I can't do this anymore, right? Or I shouldn't dress like this, that sort of thing.
So what can the audience do to help your work?
I guess I would take it from a personal perspective. I think the most important thing that people can really do, and there's obviously a number, and again, Anur and Laura will have a lot to add to this, but I think educate yourself about ageism, and I think about aging and what it's about, and the diversity in aging. And I think it's really, really important to recognize and examine your own biases, right? And monitor those age beliefs that you have, and catch yourself when you're making an ageist comment, you know, like I'm having a senior moment, those kinds of things. And I think we need to really be conscious and aware of how we speak to older people, right? And again, I say challenge that your own ageist self-talk, and become aware of your internalized ageist messages. And I think, and one of the things that Anur was talking about, I think the programs that the city is implementing now are really important. And he's right, it's very exciting, because I think what's really important is often what we do as older people, you might just stay within your own peers. And I think it's really, really important to have friends and connections across all generations, and make a point of exploring these friendships and interactions with other generations, right? So those kinds of things that are important, and keep learning. I mean, I think that is also, and get involved, have a purpose, and that will change your attitudes towards aging, I think is real important.
Laura, can you add to that?
One of the things that we really value at CanAge, which again is canage.ca for folks who'd like to go learn more and get on the website, is the stories that people have. One of the things we always make sure that we do whenever we're giving submissions to government or we're trying to change third-party policy is by leading with the stories and the experiences of people. So we really evaluate how the lived experiences of folks who've experienced ageism, and I'm 52 and I've experienced ageism, has impacted them. So I would recommend, pop over to the website at canage.ca and click join. It's just free. You just need to be able to receive our emails and share your stories with us.
Okay. Do we have any final comments?
Yeah, I'd like to plug one more program. So I've talked about the great, exciting opportunity of our Community Advisory Assembly, but there's another program at the city which is called our Community Action Network. And this is really novel work because we recognize that one of the groups that really will continue to benefit from more equitable engagement are older adults, particularly low-income and isolated seniors. And in 2019, the city partnered with the BC Poverty Reduction Coalition on a program called the Community Action Network Leadership Program. And really, this leadership program works with people directly with lived and living experience in many equity denying issues, including disabilities, homelessness, poverty. And they specifically work directly with staff. They're compensated, and they really work to expand the engagement process of how we hear from some of these under-recognized groups. We've had 2 intake sessions, and many of our CAN members have directly helped engage on developing our housing needs report, our digital inclusion work, so getting people out of digitally exclusion into digital inclusion, and even our homelessness action strategy. We've had 2 intakes. We have a number of CAN leaders in the city that directly work with staff, and we're going to have another intake into 2024. So I really encourage people to get involved, to have a voice, because I often think about loneliness and social isolation is not only about getting support, it's often being given the ability to give support back. And that's something that really helps combat some of these issues. So our community advisory assembly and our community action network are 2 programs at the City of New West that are very exciting and great opportunities to directly engage and have a voice in your community, in your city, which is very important.
Sorry, I just, and maybe Laura can address this, but again, the feedback we're getting, as soon as you even mention the word senior, it's negative. There's a very negative attitude in response to that. And it's interesting because we've all been seniors at one point through our life. I mean, if you're a senior in high school or you're a senior at university or college, it's an accomplishment, right? You've achieved something, and it's respect. If you're a senior executive in a company or organization, or a senior partner with a company, again, it's an achievement and an accomplishment and earns respect. Now you're a senior in life, and suddenly it's all negative. Everybody sort of looks at it from a very negative aspect.
And why do you think that is?
And I think Laura might be better able to answer that question, but based on, obviously, again, it's age, it's that age discrimination. I mean, you're a senior in life and you've got life experience, as Laura was talking about, your stories that you're telling, you've got life experience, you've got knowledge, right? Learning throughout your life. And that's something that's really valuable that you can share with people. But again, I think we look at people more based on their age, and maybe thinking of them as being frail and now incapable or unable to do certain things.
At a philosophical level, just building on that, I think that one of the challenges is we've never lived this long and we don't know really how to do it. And one of the theories for why people experience midlife crisis in the 40s and maybe early 50s is because that's typically the end of life, and has been so really for the past, millennia. It's only in the last couple hundred years that we've really been able to substantially extend the life course. And so I think that part of it is that we're not used to having older people be a third of someone's lifespan, which is what we're looking at right now. And part of what that means is we need to rethink what purpose and vitality means. We need to understand more what the working life means. We need people, because of our profound labor shortage and demographic shift, to work on average about 7 years longer than they do. Like, we are in a profound narrowing of our age. It's supposed to be a bulge, and we're an hourglass instead. We need to make sure that people can be active and engaged, doing vibrant things past the age of 60 or 65 or 70. And we know that that's the most important part of well-being, is making sure that we have a sense of purpose and engagement. And coming from that is health and wealth, a lot of the downflow of those pieces. So when I'm thinking about aging and why we have ageism in the way that we do, I actually think because we don't know how to be old, not in the way that we're being old now. But there's never an explanation for discrimination. And fundamentally, I can't explain to you why some people don't like or accept people who experience equity deserving issues in their life. Like, why is there racial discrimination? I have no idea. It makes no sense to me. Why is there age discrimination? I don't know. I don't think there's a really good answer for hate. But to the degree that there's an answer for how we're rethinking our social structure, I do think there is something to the fact that we don't quite know what to do with ourselves with our extended longevity.
I think that's a good note to end on. We're all aging, and we want to age even longer than we're aging now, if that's at all possible. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. But thank you so much, folks, for being here. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your counsel. It is much appreciated. I want to recognize that this podcast is sponsored by the Senior Services Society of British Columbia. And I'm so proud to MC this and coordinate this with these folks who are who study this and are very well versed in how to interpret that to our audience. So thank you so much, folks, for being here. Much appreciated.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review.